Welcome to another exciting edition of the MMA Outsider podcast. I'm your host, Richard Anderson Mann, and joining me in a few moments is my co-host, John Buell. We're going to be breaking down Tachi Palace Fights 10, Let the Chips Fall, which airs live on Sherdog.com this Friday night. We're going to start off with promoter Jeremy Lukow in about 30 seconds. Then we're going to interview Daryl Montague, who defends his TPF flyweight title against Ian McCall in the main event. So let's waste less of your time and get right into it.
So we're here joined by Jeremy Lukow, and he is the mastermind behind Tachi Palace Fights. They have a huge card coming up on Friday, a couple really big flyweight bouts and featherweight title on the line. There's a lot to talk about, but first off, Jeremy, this close to the show, how busy are you, or is most of the major heavy lifting already done?
Kind of right now, it's kind of in cruise control a little bit. When you get to this point right before weigh-ins, you just make sure everyone's, got all their paperwork turned in and stuff, and, I kind of just turned into a guy that kind of makes sure I'm accommodating everybody, and everyone has everything that they need once they get over here to the hotel and everything, and, get the weigh-ins all set up and ready to go.
Yeah, and the first thing I wanted to ask you about, there's some great fights like Daryl Montague, Ian McCall, and Mamoru Yamaguchi against Jussier Da Silva. Those are the ones a lot of people are talking about. All those guys are top 10 caliber fighters at flyweight. But as you probably know, a lot of the discussion right now is about, when is the UFC going to have a flyweight division? And I'm sure they're looking at the weight class you guys have put together, and they're probably keeping an eye on everything as far as when they're going to do things. So, what's it like for you sitting back knowing that the biggest promotion in the world is probably watching you guys to see what you do with that weight class as far as what they're going to do?
It's a good feeling. It just shows that we've been doing things right with that division and building it. And the UFC's always had their eye on guys at the Tachi, whether it was when the WEC was here or the Power Fighting Championships. So, we're familiar with those guys, and it's kind of a good feeling to know that we've built such a strong division that people now are saying it's one of the best in the world. So, guys like Luis Gonzalez, Ulysses Gomez, and those guys kind of help pave the way. Pat Runez and Alexi Villa, when those guys were out here initially, paved the way for the division, and some of these other guys are starting to come along now too.
Right. Now, one of the first fights I'll ask you about, one guy I think everyone's going to be pretty familiar with is Joe Soto. He was the Bellator champion until he had that great fight with Joe Warren, where actually he was kind of beating Warren's ass until that comeback in the second round. But you got him against, is it Eddie Yagin?
Yagin. Yeah, Eddie Yagin.
Yeah, Yagin. Okay, I noticed Eddie hasn't been in the fight game for a while, a couple of years. What brought him back? And, as far as how is he as far as ring rust and just, being healthy and ready to go?
Yagin had that war with Diego Saraiva. He ended up losing due to a cut. And, after that fight, he took some time and he relocated to San Diego. He was training in Vegas. He relocated to San Diego. And he trained at a couple different gyms. So it was just a matter of time before he kind of got settled back into his groove and doing things the right way. And, now that he's back, we're really happy to have him come back and fight for us.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's my understanding that Joe Soto is still under contract with Bellator. Did you guys have to work with them to try to co-promote, or did he just have to get permission from the other promoter?
We just had to get permission from them to use them.
All right.
All right. Now, also, you mentioned Joe Soto. He had the eye injury. You mentioned in your last blog on ProMMANow.com the headache of trying to get everyone's medicals done. But, I'm assuming he's ready and healthy and ready to go because I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see what he's looked like after that crazy fight with Warren.
Yeah, before we even signed Joe, he went and got his clearance from the commission and with the eye doctor, so he was all cleared to fight with all his medicals and stuff before we even signed the contract for the fight. So we already knew he was healthy and ready to go. We're looking forward to bringing Joe back. He got to start out in Porterville fighting for Gladiator Challenge, and then coming to the PFC and fighting at Tachi Palace. So this is his home away from home. So he's up in Santa Rosa now, training with the NorCal guys. So.
Right. Now, back to the flyweights, I think Formiga against Yamaguchi is going to be an awesome fight, and those are two guys that have, been up in the rankings for a long time, but, as a promoter or, working for the promotion, McCall and Montague is a great fight. Do you think that one is getting enough attention that it should, or do you think it's going to have to maybe convince people of how good a fight that is come fight day?
I think that, the Montague McCall match is getting a lot of buzz right now. I think maybe it's a little bit more because they're Americans, and then, Montague's been doing a little talking in the press, and they're a little bit converse.
With all the flyweights like Formiga, Yamaguchi, Montague, McCall, Gomez, people are familiar with those guys, Doug Durano, Marshall against Giva Santana, but what maybe that people maybe aren't as familiar with the two combatants that you think might be worth watching for the fans that are going to be tuning in on the stream?
Well, definitely the first person that comes to mind is Lopez. I think that he's going to be a guy you're going to UFC very soon, if not Strikeforce. He's a Wanderlei Silva, protege, and he's got great striking. He's a nation's fighter. I think he's definitely the person on the card that maybe people aren't making a lot of noise about, but definitely worthy of it.
Right. Now, and as far as his opponent, David Marshall, is it kind of like a showcase fight for him, or is Marshall kind of a serious threat, do you think?
It was a situation where we had Andre Galvao in the spot, and I think that was a fight where we could have seen really what pushed George, to the limit a little bit in that style of fight. And when he pulled out, we had to find somebody kind of short notice, a week or two notice, and David Marshall kind of stepped in. He's a local guy. Trains with the Demon Brothers out of a scouting camp out there. Got a solid record. He's someone that we've been looking at, another prospect that we've been looking at. So it's one of those things where you put two prospects in together, and what that fight is going to be kind of in the driver's seat to get to the big show,
Right. Now, you mentioned Andre Galvao, of course, a great grappler, Strikeforce veteran. And actually there have been a few guys that have had to drop off of this card for various reasons. Doug Marshall's another late fill-in. What's it been like just trying to keep this card together, and the fact that it's actually still a really good quality card? How good do you feel having to, put together this kind of card with so many replacements?
I always got a lot of trust in the stuff that we're able to do here with our matchmaker, Richard Goodman and myself, knowing that, you really don't find out what type of promoter or matchmaker you are until things start to fall apart and see how well you can put them back together. So we've always done a good job of being able to kind of, salvage the card and improve it, Some people think we made some improvements in some areas, so, it's a good thing overall.
Right, definitely. So, Jeremy, I think those were all the questions we have, but we appreciate you taking the time to preview the card. It's going to be a great event, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it after it happens, because Richard's going to have a lot of headaches trying to figure out his flyweight rankings. But thanks very much for taking the time and also helping, you're always really helpful with us as far as getting fighter interviews and everything, so we appreciate it.
All right, no problem.
All right, take care. Yep, bye.
All right, well, there you go. Jeremy Lukow, the promoter for Tattoo Palace Fights. Their 10th card, Tattoo Palace Fights, Let the Chips Fall, takes place this weekend at the Tattoo Palace Hotel and Casino in Lemoore, California. You can catch it live on Sherdog.com. John and I were going to break down the 3 main fights, just give our picks before we move on to the rest of the show. So, main event, Daryl Montague, Ian McCall.
Yeah, it's actually a really good fight. I think in a way this could be Montague's coming out party. I think win or lose, he's going to put up a hell of a fight. But for me, I just think with McCall's wrestling ability and that little bit more experience he has, I think Montague probably has better kicks, but I think McCall will be a little bit better with his hands and, just being able to dictate where the fight goes. I think that's going to be key in this fight, and it'll be close and competitive, and it should be fight of the night, but I'm going to take McCall just barely.
Yeah, I think he's going to be taller and longer, and I think he uses his reach really well. He did in his last fight, and I think he's going to again here. So I'm going to take Ian McCall as well. In the featherweight title fight, Joe Soto and Eddie Yagin.
There I am going with Soto. He hasn't been out of the game quite as long. Yagin, he's fought some gamers, Rich Clemente, other guys. He's come out on the wrong end of the stick a few times. I think if Soto is ready physically and mentally and, kind of puts that Joe Warren loss behind him, maybe uses it to motivate him, I think he'll do pretty well. But I think Soto is just kind of on the rise, and pretty good fight for him. But I think Soto's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's interesting when a fighter comes off such a long layoff like Joe Soto does, but then again, Yagin's kind of in the same situation. And I think that Soto showed off a lot of his striking and sort of used his wrestling in reverse during his Bellator career. I think that when you're coming off a long layoff and you're coming in against a game fighter like Gagnon, it's going to be good to have the wrestling to fall back on. And I think if he gets in trouble, he's going to be able to double him up and get on top and win rounds. Because it is a 5-round title fight. So I also think Soto's going to win. Then the other flyweight fight, I guess like a flyweight feature fight, Jussier Da Silva and Mamoru Yamaguchi. Are you taking the ant or the afro?
Well, I was actually thinking about taking the afro, just off the fact that he's actually, unlike a lot of other Japanese fighters, I think his style and, fits in pretty well with the North American fighting techniques that we see a lot of as far as just good, crisp striking and that kind of stuff. We've seen plenty of guys from Japan in the lower weight classes come over here and just do horribly. But, I think you sold me on the fact that Formiga's grappling, he's a grappling whiz. We've seen it with his transitions, how good he is in scrambles, and that has been Yamaguchi's kind of Achilles heel in the past, like against BJ on those 2 occasions. So, it's hard to ignore that matchup issue, and I'm thinking Formiga might get back on the winning track.
Yeah, I think so too. In a lot of ways, Yamaguchi is a tough fight for Formiga because he presents a lot of the same things that McCall did. He's big, he comes forward with straight punches, and he's really able to use distance. With that being said, I think Formiga, his ability to take the back in a scramble is really something special. And, the round he won against McCall, it was basically because he caught his back in the scramble and just held it the entire time. And if he had done that in one of the other rounds early, he probably would have won the fight 29-28. I think that I expect Mamoru to look good, but I expect Da Silva to win by submission. So it's going to be interesting. We're both picking him to win by submission, and he's very good positionally, but, he didn't submit Kojima, and he didn't submit McCall, or his other Tachi Palace Fights opponent, right?
No, he did. It was another WEC veteran, and that guy, I think was it Martinez?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was a good fight, too. Again, from the start, I've been really impressed with Formiga's grappling and positional domination. I don't want to sell the guys he's been up against short. They've done a good job defensively, but if you do want to, you could say that, why hasn't he been able to finish any of those positions that he's had yet? Because he is a great grappler. So that's another thing to think about is if he can get Yamaguchi like that. But if Yamaguchi keeps his cool this time and fights him off, then I think that could be a big blow to Formiga's confidence if he can't get a submission if he gets another dominant position like that.
I agree. All right, well, that's going to do it. We're going to wrap up Tachi Palace Fights are there. Coming back in the next segment, we have the man in the main event, the TPF flyweight champion, Daryl Montague. He is going to be defending his belt against Ian McCall, so check out the interview after the break.